Um, Imagine walking into this really high-end, dimly lit gallery. You're just standing there, and right in front of you is this massive, imposing portrait of a divine being.
Oh, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. And it has these piercing eyes, the kind of gaze that literally follows you around the room. It feels very reminiscent of Michelangelo's David.
So a piece with some real physical presence to it.
Exactly. The physical form is so finely rendered, and the brushstrokes are so deliberate, you would swear you were looking at a lost masterpiece by a Renaissance painter.
It's the kind of aesthetic achievement that just demands your attention the moment you walk through the door.
It really is. You're drawn in completely. But then the gallery curator leans in and whispers the twist.
Here we go.
This painting wasn't conceptualized by a human mind. The entire composition, the emotional weight of those eyes, the lighting, all of it was generated by an artificial intelligence named Keek.
Wow. Which completely reverses the traditional dynamic of art history, if you think about it.
Totally. Because then a team of human assistants carefully hand-painted the physical canvas. They were just following the machine's exact digital vision, pixel by pixel.
So the machine is acting as the creative visionary, and the humans are reduced to just being the tools executing that vision.
Yeah, and this actually happened. The piece is called Golden Breath. It was the centerpiece at Christie's first ever AI art auction in early 2025.
Ah, yes, the augmented intelligence auction.
That's the one. And that single event officially kicked off one of the most urgent cultural and economic debates we are facing today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission for you today is to unpack this massive shift. We're going to look at how AI went from being this quirky parlor trick to the actual foundational infrastructure of the creative world.
And we really need to look at the explosive legal battles, too. People are fighting over whether this technology represents the next great leap in innovation or just, straight up theft.
Right. And we'll dive into the deep philosophical debate about what creativity even means in the 21st century.
To map all of this out, we've gathered a really fascinating stack of source materials. We'll be analyzing the 2026 Brave New World Report on Creator Rights alongside the Envato Beyond Adoption Survey.
That Envato survey has some incredible data, by the way.
It really does. It shows how working creatives are actually handling this tech day to day. We also have recent legal rulings, like the Supreme Court's definitive stance in Thaler v. Perlmutter.
Plus some highly revealing psychological studies on how you, the public, actually perceive machine-made art once you know how it's made.
Which is a whole other twist.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think to truly grasp the controversy, we have to start with the sheer velocity of this shift. You can't really understand the panic from artists or the excitement from tech companies until you understand the scale.
The scale is staggering.
It is. We're looking at a generative AI art market that hit $620 million in 2025. And it's projected to reach $880 million by the end of 2026.
That is a 42.1% growth rate in a single year. And those economic figures, they're driven by an output volume that is honestly hard to comprehend on a human level. Let's look at the historical context for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
Think about the entire photography industry. From the very first surviving photograph taken in 1826, it took roughly 100 to 50 years, all the way to 1975, for humanity to collectively produce 15 billion images.
A century and a half. I mean, that encompasses world wars, the invention of film, the consumer camera, just to hit 15 billion photos.
Exactly. Now, generative AI image tools produce that same number, 15 billion images in a single year.
A single year. That's just wild.
And roughly 80% of those came from Stable Diffusion models alone. If you look at the platform Midjourney, as of 2025, they were processing between 20 and 40 requests every single second.
Wait, every second?
Every second. That translates to 2.5 million new images generated every single day.
That speed comparison just breaks my brain. It literally feels like we handed a paintbrush to a global factory that never sleeps.
That's a good way to put it.
But, I mean, before we even get to the legal fight over the art, how is it physically possible to generate 15 billion images in a year? What is the actual mechanism making this factory hum? Because I keep seeing the term diffusion model in our sources.
Right. It is a brilliant piece of engineering, honestly. To understand a diffusion model, imagine taking a crystal clear photograph of a cat.
Okay, got a cat.
Now, add a layer of television static to it, then add another layer of static and another until the image is completely destroyed and all you see is just visual noise.
So it just looks like a broken TV channel.
Exactly. The AI is trained by reversing that exact process. It looks at pure static and learns how to slowly remove the noise step by step until a coherent image emerges.
Oh, wow.
So when you ask it for a picture of a cat, it doesn't just grab clip art of a cat from the internet. It starts with random static and essentially hallucinates the structure of a cat out of the noise.
Because of the mathematical patterns it learned during training.
Precisely.
So it's not pulling from a giant digital collage. It is literally reconstructing patterns from chaos. That definitely explains the speed.
It does.
But it makes me wonder, are we confusing volume with value here? Because the Envato report notes that in just 18 months, AI went from a novelty to infrastructure.
Yeah. Over 35% of fine art auctions now feature AI pieces.
35%. That's huge.
That transition from novelty to infrastructure is really the defining characteristic of this era. It means the technology is no longer just a fun experiment on the fringes.
Right. It's the actual substrate that modern creative work is being built on.
But as you hinted at earlier, that massive volume of output relies entirely on a massive volume of input.
Ah, yes.
The model had to learn what a cat or a sunset or a Renaissance painting looks like in the first place. And that brings us to the core ethical battle. Where did this machine factory get its training data?
The scraping. Because to generate 2.5 million images a day, the AI had to be trained on billions of images scraped off the web. And it did this largely without the consent of or compensation to the original human creators.
The Brave New World report from February 2026 really quantifies the human cost of this. They surveyed about 10,000 creators, representing a massive coalition of over 80,000 professionals.
And what did they find?
99% of them confirmed their work was scraped to train these commercial models without their consent.
99%. Basically everyone.
Yeah. And the financial impact is stark. Professional musicians are reporting income cuts of up to 50%.
Wait, half their income? Because of AI?
Yes, because AI background tracks are just replacing paid composition work entirely. And professional photographers are reporting average losses of £14,000 as clients opt for generated stock imagery.
That is just devastating for the people actually making a living doing this.
It really is.
The foreword to that report was written by UK Baroness Bevan Kidron, and she really did not hold back. She called this, quote, one of the greatest acts of theft in modern history.
A very strong statement.
Right. She argues that private property is just being taken in plain sight under the guise of technological progress. And it's not just visual art or background music either.
No, there's also the deeply unsettling case of the Scottish actor Bryony Munro.
Yes, that one is intense.
She believes her actual facial likeness and her specific vocal cadences were used to train an AI virtual performer named Tilly Norwood.
Which crosses a massive line, right? From just aesthetic imitation into actual personal identity appropriation.
Completely. And this palpable anger is exactly why the Christie's auction you mentioned faced such intense public backlash.
Over 6,500 people signed a petition protesting the event.
Yeah, they argued that prestigious institutions were legitimizing the mass theft of human labor.
Though, to be fair, the AI artist Refik Anadol, who used like 1.2 million space and satellite images for his work, he dismissed the critics.
He did. He called it lazy doomsday hysteria.
Right. And honestly, let me push back on the theft narrative for a second, just looking at the mechanics of art history.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
Human artists walk through museums all the time, right? They scrape inspiration from the masters. If I spend 10 years studying Picasso, examining his brushstrokes, and then I paint something in a cubist style, nobody sues me.
True.
I just learned from what came before.
So is what the machine does legally or practically any different? Or is it just the speed and the scale that makes us uncomfortable?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact argument the major tech companies make in their legal defense. They claim their models are learning the exact same way a human student learns.
Right, makes sense.
But the nuance lies in the underlying mechanism. Human inspiration is a cognitive transformative process.
So.
When you walk through a museum, you filter those inspirations through your own life experiences, your emotions, your cultural background. Even your physical limitations shape it to create something entirely new.
Oh, okay.
AI scraping, however, is essentially data extraction for a commercial predictive model. It's just mathematically mapping pixel relationships. I see the distinction. So it's the difference between being emotionally inspired by a beautiful sunset and just calculating the statistical probability of the color orange appearing next to purple on a grid.
Precisely. And the legal system is currently wrestling with this exact distinction. In the U.S., the reality of how the law views this was clarified by the Supreme Court in March 2026.
That was the landmark case, right? Thaler v. Perlmutter.
That's the one.
Given the history of copyright law explicitly protecting human expression, I'm assuming the courts slammed the door on registering the machine as the author.
They absolutely did. A computer scientist named Stephen Thaler tried to register an AI system he called the Creativity Machine as the sole author of a piece of visual art.
And they said no.
Firmly rejected it. The court stated that human authorship is a fundamental, non-negotiable requirement for copyright.
Wow.
But they went a step further, actually. The U.S. Copyright Office clarified that the text prompts you type into an AI generator, no matter how detailed or complex they are, they don't count as authorship either.
Wait, really? Even if I write a paragraph describing exactly what I want?
Even then, they classified prompts as unprotectable ideas. It's legally equivalent to a wealthy patron telling a human painter, paint me a picture of a dog in a field.
Oh, I get it. You don't own the copyright to the painting just because you gave the instructions.
Right. The painter does. But since the AI can't hold a copyright, no one does.
That completely flips the commercial incentive on its head. If you can't copyright purely AI-generated work, how do you even monetize it?
You really don't, natively.
It means that purely AI work is essentially public domain the second it hits the screen. Anyone could take an AI image you prompted, put it on a t-shirt, and sell it, and you would have no legal recourse.
That lack of protection is causing massive headaches for corporations trying to use AI for proprietary branding.
Oh, I bet. And here's where it gets incredibly tense. With the law lagging behind the technology and the ethical debates raging, how are actual working creatives handling this?
The freelancers, the agency workers.
Yeah, because they're caught right in the crossfire between ethical fears and the necessity to just pay rent.
The Envato survey provides incredible insight into this practitioner's dilemma. Over 90% of the creative professionals they surveyed are actively using AI in their workflows.
90%.
Yeah.
Almost everyone.
Right. Yet 69% of them feel completely unprepared for an AI-driven industry, and 81% are actively worried about job losses.
It is a profound paradox. Everyone is relying on a tool they are terrified of.
Yes.
And the generational breakdown of that data is deeply ironic to me. You would assume Gen Z, the digital natives who grew up with iPads, would be entirely confident navigating this.
And they do lead in daily adoption at 54%.
Right, but only 37% of them actually feel prepared for the future. They know exactly which buttons to press to get a good image, but they don't know how to navigate the business implications.
Exactly. What happens when a client decides they don't need to hire a junior artist anymore?
Exactly. Meanwhile, you have Gen X creatives who are facing intense immediate pressure from clients who suddenly think every single project should be turned around faster and cheaper. Because, hey, can't the AI just do it?
And that pressure fractures across different creative disciplines too. Designers specifically are proving to be the most resistant group.
Interesting. Why designers?
Well, only 40% of designers use AI daily, compared to much higher adoption rates for developers or marketers. A separate UK study corroborated this, finding that 81% of designers believe AI actively dulls human creativity.
Is it just preservation of their craft?
It comes down to the nature of their work. Design isn't just about rendering a pretty image. It's about solving highly specific, nuanced communication problems.
Right, like balancing brand identity, user psychology, typography.
Yes, and current generative AI tools are often too blunt for that. They don't serve the meticulous nuance of the craft. And designers are just frustrated by how the technology is devaluing their problem-solving process.
Because clients just want a quick graphic.
Precisely.
There is also a massive geographic divide in the data that caught my eye. Western creatives in the US and the UK are facing 6 times more pressure to prove the value of human creativity to their clients compared to their peers in Asia or the Middle East and Africa.
A huge cultural difference in adoption there.
Yeah. But the wildest statistic from the entire Envato survey, the one that really stopped me, is about transparency. 58% of creatives are using AI without ever telling their clients.
It is the don't ask, don't tell era of creative work. A silent integration.
This don't ask, don't tell stat is fascinating. It's like finding out the head chef at a Michelin star restaurant is secretly using a microwave to prep the vegetables.
That is a very apt analogy.
Right. They aren't trying to poison you. They're just trying to survive the dinner rush. The profit margins are tight. Deadlines are tighter. And if the client can't taste the difference, the creative simply doesn't mention the microwave.
It highlights a survival mechanism in a rapidly shifting economic landscape. Creators are using the tool to boost their efficiency just to keep their heads above water.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But this raises an important subsequent question. If the people making the art are secretly using the machine to meet client demand, what happens when the people buying or consuming the art find out? Does the general public actually want machine-made culture?
You would think they do, based on the sheer volume of images consumed daily. But the data tells a completely different story. Let's look at public perception. First of all, Merriam-Webster's 2025 word of the year was slop.
Slop, a term specifically referring to the low-quality AI-generated content that is currently flooding search engines and social media feeds.
It's a very visceral word. And then there's this massive study by Anthropic, published in March 2026. They surveyed over 80,000 people across 159 different countries.
A huge sample size.
Massive. They asked people directly what they actually want from artificial intelligence. And out of every possible category, creative expression ranked dead last.
Dead last.
Only 5.6% of people wanted AI to be creative. They want AI to help with life management, personal transformation, administrative tasks.
They want a hyper-competent digital assistant, basically.
Yeah.
Not a machine replacing human culture and art.
Exactly.
This data point completely challenges the narrative that the tech industry often pushes, that AI art is an inevitable response to massive consumer demand.
Right. The demand isn't for machine-made culture.
No, the demand is coming from corporations looking for cost efficiency in content production.
But then there's the psychological aspect of how we view this art, which brings us to a fascinating paradox that emerged in a recent cognition study.
A knowledge paradox.
Yes. Researchers showed people various AI-generated images, and they found that the more people learned about how the AI art was actually made, when they were educated on the data sets, the scraping, the prompt engineering, the less morally acceptable and the less aesthetically valuable they rated those exact same images.
Familiarity breeds discomfort in this case. The knowledge of the mechanism actually degrades the experience of the art.
It's the ultimate curtain reveal. We see the wizard pulling the levers, and suddenly it's just not magical anymore. But does that just mean we are art snobs?
How do you mean?
Think about it. If an image is beautiful, if the lighting is perfect and it visually moves you in the moment, why does knowing how the sausage is made suddenly ruin the aesthetic experience?
It is not snobbery. It gets to the philosophical core of what we consider art to be.
Okay, unpack that.
The sources highlight a profound argument made by Sue Turner OBE at a recent Digital Futures panel. She noted, creativity carries ownership and responsibility.
Meaning art is a human-to-human thing.
Exactly. Art has fundamentally always functioned as communication between human beings. It is an act of vulnerability.
A shared experience across time or space.
Right. When you look at a painting or listen to a piece of music, you are connecting with the intention of the artist. A human being took a risk, made choices based on their lived experience, and put a piece of themselves into the work.
And a machine can't do that.
A machine has no inner life. It risks nothing. It cannot intend. It cannot suffer or feel joy or experience grief.
It can simulate the aesthetic markers of human emotion perfectly, sure.
But there is no consciousness behind the canvas. So when people learn that an image is just a statistical prediction of pixel placement based on unconsented data, the illusion of communication breaks. The magic disappears because the humanity was never there to begin with.
We aren't just reacting to pretty colors. We are inherently looking for a connection to another mind.
Exactly.
So, knowing all this, the public is deeply wary of slop. Creators are actively hurting financially while hiding their use of the tools, and the courts are drawing hard lines on copyright. But the technology obviously isn't going away.
No, it's here to stay.
What is the blueprint for coexistence? How do we move forward?
The sources point to a collaborative path rather than a competitive one. The ideal state is viewing AI strictly as a partner in the creative process.
Right.
Ben Ackland, a creative tech founder, put it perfectly. He said, humans create with AI as a tool. It is not AI creating independently.
We mentioned Sofia Crespo earlier, the artist who trains AI models exclusively on her own personal nature photography.
That is an ethical, controlled collaboration where the human remains the author of the data.
And on a broader industry level, the Brave New World report proposed a structural solution called the CLEAR framework, CLER.
Which stands for consent, licensing, ethical use, accountability, and remuneration.
Basically, creators are saying, look, we aren't Luddites trying to smash the looms here. We want to participate in the AI economy. We just don't want to be erased by it.
They want compensation if their life's work is used to train a commercial model.
Which seems fair. And the UK House of Lords took these concerns very seriously.
They did. They recently issued recommendations demanding absolute transparency from AI developers.
They want to stop the practice of opt-out data mining too, meaning tech companies shouldn't be allowed to scrape your work unless you explicitly opt in first.
Most crucially, they are pushing to close a major legal loophole by specifically protecting against unauthorized digital replicas of a creator's distinct style or voice, even if a specific copyrighted work isn't directly copied.
This clear framework and the House of Lords recommendations, they sound perfectly fair on paper. But honestly, aren't they just trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube?
No.
The massive base models are already built. Those 15 billion images have already been generated. The entire web has been scraped. How do you license a style retroactively when the machine already knows how to mimic it perfectly?
Well, that is the defining regulatory challenge of this decade. You cannot untrain a massive language or image model easily, but you can regulate its future commercial application.
So treating the outputs differently.
Exactly. You can mandate transparency moving forward, requiring clear watermarks or disclosures on commercial AI outputs. You can mandate that future iterations of these models be built on entirely new ethical datasets.
Right.
The point the sources emphasize is that surrendering to the status quo just because the initial damage of the scraping is done is not a viable option for the long-term survival of the creative class.
They have to draw the regulatory lines now, even if the transition is messy.
To synthesize what we've covered today, we are at a profound cultural inflection point.
We really are.
We are currently deciding, through lawsuits, through new legislation, and through our own daily usage, whether AI will ultimately be a tool that elevates human expression, handling the tedious tasks so we can dream bigger.
Or if it will be a replacement that turns human expression into nothing more than raw material for an algorithm.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? It means that you actually hold a massive amount of power in this equation. As a consumer, your attention is the currency of the internet.
What you choose to click on matters.
What you choose to pay for and what you choose to value will dictate the future of this technology. If we just accept the cheapest, fastest content pushed into our feeds, we get a race to the bottom, a world flooded with algorithmic slop.
But if we demand transparency, if we actively seek out and fund human craft, we could actually enter a new era of augmented human creativity.
It is a fundamental choice between scale and soul.
Beautifully said.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over. The next time you're scrolling online and you find yourself stopped in your tracks by a breathtaking image, take a second look.
Ask the question.
Ask yourself, are you connecting with the soul of an artist who lived, struggled, and felt something deeply to put that image into the world? Or are you just admiring the math?
And if you truly can't tell the difference anymore, does it matter?
A vital question for the years ahead. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. Keep questioning, keep creating, and stay curious. See you next time.